o'clock, and I would like to just acknowledge that we remain on the lands of our Indigenous peoples, and I think it's very important that we continue to show our respect. Council, any declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest on the Committee of the Whole agenda? Seeing none, I will have moved by Councillor Graziano, second by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole adopts agenda of May 9th, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor? And that is carried. And we go straight to new business. And Councillor Graziano, I'm going to ask you to introduce item A with regards to council emergency response communications.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly.
Could we ask Councillor Hazelton to turn his camera on?
Oh, Councillor Hazelton. Councillor Bochek would like to see you on screen.
Yes.
There is Mr. Councillor Hazelton's smiling face. Sorry, Councillor Graziano, for that delay.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. So to facilitate conversation today, I brought forward a motion that is all encompassing with regards to communication, specifically emergency responses. And that I think would dovetail well into the site sustainability report 2023-62, specifically the fifth bullet on communications as well. On Saturday, the context here was that on Saturday, April 22nd, at 7:14 a.m., the northbound 400 Crooked Bay Road was closed for most part of the morning and into the early afternoon. All northbound traffic was forced to exit in Crooked Bay, with the option to either re-enter the highway 400 southbound or wait until the closure lifted. And myself being affected by this, I did see quite a few cars just kind of lurking around waiting. A lot of that spillover was on Crooked Bay. Councils were not notified of the closure by OPP, and we've since learned in our with their delegation that the best way to kind of stay abreast right now is through Twitter, unless of course we receive some kind of information from them, but with some receiving numerous phone calls such as myself and emails from concerned constituents throughout the course of the morning. We've also in parallel requested to be notified for power outages, and perhaps councillors may also benefit from additional information such as road closures, flooding, and or all emergency communications issued by the district, province, or OPP. So again, it's really to facilitate conversation. The request or the resolution is to request that staff investigate ways and or current or possible not current systems whereby we can be notified for future emergencies such as those hydro outages and road closures, so on. Buoyant alert could also be an option there if something, but we're requesting staff to come back to us. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Staff and perhaps Chief Van Dam, because anybody could respond, but I would like to have a staff response before I turn to council for their questions and possible input.
I can.
CEO Mariotti, why don't you, sir, lead off the conversation?
Thank you, Meg. Yeah, I can understand the frustration. For 2 years I traveled north into Parry Sound, come summer or winter, and there's the odd occasion where the weather's bad, or there's been an accident, and I'm trying to get to work. So what I started doing is I actually downloaded the 311 app, which 511. I haven't had to use it in.
No wonder he wasn't well informed.
Yeah, it's there are other forums. I think Twitter. We all heard yesterday that it's a tool that can be used. I also subscribe to the OPP news portal. Now it's gone quiet. So I did reach out to Sergeant Major majeur to find out what's going on. So I'm going to be chatting with Mr. Hobson on seeing where that goes, because that's a really good source. It actually, we know of incidences before even the media finds out. Voint Alert is another good tool if there are any district or township emergencies. And in terms of Hydro One, we've when we had the power outage in Mactier, we ourselves were not notified until last minute, if I'm not mistaken. So again, there's an app for the Hydro One outages, and there was something else. Oh, and I'm sure Chief Van Dam is going to chip in, but Chief Van Dam himself was not aware of the ultimate road closure on the 400. So it's kind of a little bit out of our wheelhouse. There are tools and mechanisms out there for for our ratepayers as well as ourselves to keep abreast as to what's going on, but it's not really in our wheelhouse to manage this. We could, as an extra service level, have additional staff on board to monitor any events that happen, and that individual can then do an email blast to council, especially if council has numerous complaints on certain things. But again, that's an additional level of service that would be required. Not only that, but if something happens on the weekend or at 1 o'clock in the morning, we need to have that kind of coverage for those events as well. I'll turn it over to the chief, because the last thing that comes to my mind is I think the chief would rather be busy extricating someone or helping someone to resolve the incident, rather than focusing on trying to let everyone know what's going on, and it's probably not in his wheelhouse either. But I'll pass it over to Chief.
Chief Van Dam.
So council, there's a few issues that come out with it. And one of them is that when we start to give information out, it's been thought out and you're going to get it. I'm going to say, if you're watching the social media and stuff like that, you'll get certain things a lot faster. We've even actually, to tell you the truth, we've found a couple calls that are on social media, and then it comes through the 911 system. So that's why the next piece of next gen 911 will hopefully identify some of those. But as we're having the emergency, there's a piece that goes with communication. And during an emergency, it's very important that the message that's being brought forward is, I'm going to say, thought out, communicated, and verified. When we start sending out communications that needs to be sent out, it's got to be we have to monitor what's going on at that point as a municipality and responsibilities. When the emergency is happening, it's very difficult for, say, the incident commander, myself, to be monitoring that when you're dealing with whatever. So that becomes a concern. And one of the things that I really do not want to get into is that we let a counselor know, and then the counselor starts emailing it out because we can't monitor what's going on with that. And then that takes away from when we have that large scale emergency and we need to get some serious messaging out, that we want them to be going to that Voint Alert. So if we want to use that tool, that I don't want them, oh, I'm going to call a counselor and see where that's going, what's happening. We don't want that happening, because we can't monitor all of that communications that's going on. And when you're doing a large scale emergency, it's very important that you can see the messaging. That way, if some miscommunication starts going out, that you can get that corrected before people, I'm going to say, start driving down the 400 right into the zone where we don't want them. So there's a number of things that go in that. We have a lot of, I'm going to say, social media and apps out there that we can do that. So I don't want to get into that. We're doing, I'm going to say, emailing a counselor directly and going into it, because then that adds another piece of the puzzle that we need to be monitoring and controlling. And 6 Mile, the snowmobile accident that we had at 6 Mile was a example of that there was an email going out, and as incident command communicating with the OPP, we're going, how the hell's that out already? How's that out already? Because we're trying to control what messaging is going out. So that's just a piece of the puzzle. I get that if you're having constituents that are contacting you looking for the information, I would really appreciate that you take that time to educate, to say, check on Voyant alert, and through our communications department there, once we start to activate some of that stuff, they're monitoring it. As for the motor vehicle collision, we were at that motor vehicle collision, and when we left, the highway was open, and I didn't find about it out till I went home, was doing some work around the house, and I'm gonna say probably 3 to 4 hours later, checking my phone and on the social media, that's how I found it. Right at that point, going, what the heck's what's transpired now, right? So now I'm trying to do catch up to find out where it's going. So we're not always notified. They have the police, for example, they have a protocol if and I've spoke to the detachment commander in Bracebridge. They missed their protocol, because when they close that 400, that's an hour and 45-minute detour for the fire service to get up to the MacTier area. And we have a steps in place to help compensate that, but I need to make sure that that's in place. So the steps that we have taken that didn't get followed that day, and they were reminded of it. The detachment commander, Mr. Nickel, has come back from a medical leave and was very on cue with this, and I know it's already been addressed with his sergeants and stuff going forward. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. That's about it. It's the biggest part is the monitoring of what's being sent out there that I have a really big concern going, is how fast does it go?
Thank you. Commissioner.
Thank you, Your Worship, Chair Gutierrez. Councilor Graziano, I just wanted to clarify that we have had circumstances before where people have found out about deceased relatives and dogs on social media before they found out from the right channels. And so what has happened in those cases is that the original thread of who posted it is often blamed in anger. So I just worry about us deviating from the appropriate channels, because in those circumstances where it happens, they're going to look at us and say, what were you thinking? And it has happened to us before, and we have seen it happen to other people in the community, and sometimes the information has been incorrect. And so the chief is very right that we need to just stay as close as we can to the channels that are more authoritative than us, because when push comes to shove, especially when it comes to a lawsuit, they'll go right back to the original handler.
May I, Your Worship? Response. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I guess perhaps we're maybe there's a misconception as to the intent of the motion here before Cal today. It's really to converge 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 OPP 511 hydro district municipal and anything else we can throw in there into one perhaps communication. And my thought, just as a spitball thought, was that perhaps your department could curate that and distribute it out to just a select few of us, which would be council only, through a system such as Voyant Alert, allowing us to understand, hey, FYI, there's this that we just became aware of, or that we just became aware of. So this way council gets some knowledge and can act appropriately. It was never to communicate to the community, nor was it to dispatch communications to anybody, just so we had some understanding of what's happening. So when we start to receive inbound issues or concerns or inquiries, at least we have some knowledge of it. And to Tony, Mr. Van Dam's point, maybe there's sometimes where things happen and we don't even have notice because the OPP happened to fail on their protocol. That's fine. It's really just hey, we can at least converge all of these 5 or 6 different tools into one, and your department curates it and sends it out as it happens. And maybe this doesn't go beyond 9 to 5, and evening times, of course, we understand. Perhaps we look at a summer student. These are just options, hence is the reason why it's at Cal. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify that it's not our message to send out. And I think that that's probably the underlying tone that I use with our communications girl and myself, is that if there is a source of information and we can't quantify it, don't message it. And I will stand firm on that with the will of council, of course, but it's really important that we don't recreate the message or become the delivery person. As an example, the incident that you're referencing, I sent messages to the CAO the next morning because we follow, on top of all that you listed, a lot of Google alerts, and that picks up outside media. Anyone that mentions the word Georgian Bay, we get like a big long list every morning of what the Google alerts were. The accident was issued in a Google alert the next morning at 6 a.m. So even the media didn't get official information until the next day.
Counselor Bocheck, followed by Counselor Jarvis, please.
Thank you. Do we need to go through the chair because it's a cow? Or can we just speak freely?
No, I haven't opened it up to a free speech, so we have to go for the chair.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to address Chief Van Dam on this issue. In the emergency maintenance plan, I think that's what you call it. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Response plan. Is there a section in there that deals with communication? And secondly, I wasn't considering this to be a notification of people that there was accidents and that kind of stuff. I was more of thinking of this as you know, there's a tornado coming at the township and we need to reach out to everybody and make them aware. And I'm just wondering if through the emergency plan that you've put in place, if we have that communication channel available.
So we do have a communication plan in place with that, and I'm going to let Jen speak to it because they championed it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Bocheck, you're looking at the person for a communication plan. If we're in an emergency, I've gone through every possible training that Tony has sent me to for communications in an emergency. It's a very unique circumstance. The messaging, even in an emergency, doesn't come from us. It actually comes from the CAO and the mayor. And in an emergency, I sit right beside, like when we do our mock-ups and our training, I sit right beside the CAO and I'm pushing information to him to sign off and deliver. So there is a market delay, but there has to be, because the information has to be correct. And we always have to create a paper trail. So we've done everything that we know of that's available to us for training. Sometimes I take it too seriously in training. I get mad at people because they're not answering, but it's good. It's a good exercise to learn. And again, the same principle, Councillor Graziano, is if it's not our message, we don't repeat it unless it's sourced.
Thank you for that. And probably the easiest way to get information is to have your son or daughter join the fire department. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, when the bells go off, you know what's going on, trust me. Thanks, I appreciate that. And the delay was what I was interested in finding out about. When you receive the information, the protocols that are in place before you can get the information out to us, that creates a time lag. And then sometimes we don't have time, to deal with that time difference, but I understand now the process that's in place. So
yes,
it seems to be a good one, and it seems to be effective. I know we received a call a couple of years ago from you in an incident, and the message got out right away. So
yeah, I'm pretty good at finding people if I need them. And in the circumstance, and which is why I have a lot of your spouse's contact information, so that I can get access to you quickly if need be. And when the OPP calls us and tells us to advise council, we immediately start calling out. But until they do that, we just don't. It's not a message.
Counselor Jarvis.
Yeah, I just, and a follow-up to just the conversation that's ongoing here with regard to what Councilor Bochek said and your response. And through our chief, is there an access to the Amber Alert system, or is that strictly province, or how does that work? Or tie in with any of this?
So yes, I can send something out through the Amber Alert, but it's a long, tedious process for me to be able to access that. I have to go through the Provincial Operations Center, and it's a long process. If it's something that needs to be sent out by Amber Alert, I will be calling my cohorts, the OPP, and because they have their processes a lot faster.
Yeah,
If it's something like a tornado, for example, you have the Weather Network and Environment Canada that they'll send out their alerts. If we know that within say, we've sent some buoyant alerts out through to say, be prepared, we're in a tornado watch type of thing, that we try to get some communications out to be monitoring it. But there's, as you're aware of, we don't want to be the one that people are monitoring us for them to tell them when the tornado is coming, because if we miss it,
Yeah.
or we don't get it out fast enough, then we're the ones who are going to start to become the liability.
Right.
So there's the source, let the source send it out. And once they send it out, then we can follow up with some extra. But it's, if people tune to us, then we have an obligation, and that could get very expensive when you start to staff that, say, all the time.
so just to follow up with your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
Please.
So we did have an emergency about this time last year. And it was really, really awkward trying to focus where attention needed to be placed on it. And by the time, I mean, I was getting word out to people, the emergency situation had moved from the area that I was concentrating on significantly, as I found out afterwards. So that's where I thought an Amber Alert, and I'm not even suggesting that we would be initiating, but an Amber Alert through the OPP who were involved or whoever else would have been really, really helpful in that situation, because I didn't have access to, all the people that would conceivably be required to do something as a result of that situation. And I apologize, and I'm asking for indulgence here, because in my mind, this has come down to sort of all emergencies, not just specific emergencies. And that's why I'm sort of sitting on this one, because it was really awkward at the time.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are you talking about Freddie's channel?
I'm talking about the situation in Ferry Channel last year.
So that was a direct phone call to me.
Yeah.
And there were so many circumstances with that, but the immediate message was to get to the Bay counselors, and I was able to get access to everybody, I think, that I needed to get access to quickly. But that was a direct call to me. It wasn't something that was to go on Voyant Alert. It was the message that they asked us to deliver was to get it to you and to get it through your channels. I think probably to make it less of a public thing and more of a go right to the sources of people that had possible residents in the area.
Yeah, okay. I don't know what
my
the solution is.
Yeah, it wasn't my direction. The direction came from the OPP, do this, and I hung up and I did that.
Chief Bundum.
So a good example, that was the telephone game. And the story, as it got farther down the line, started to change. And when it finally got to me and I followed up with the OPP, the incident commander of that incident didn't even know that this was going on in the background. And so that's how things are going to stay ramped up. And then the protocols for us to be doing emergency communications like that wasn't being got circumvented. And as the telephone game played, it just got bigger and bigger
It
and bigger.
ballooned,
So
yeah.
it's important that we control that going forward. And believe me that we put the citizens and the residents of this municipality first. And if we have to do a door knock to the first few people, we're doing that to get that message out. And then from there, we can actually plan how we're going to get this message out. And with all of this, and I thank the councillor for bringing it up. And I hope that the people that out there are watching is that if we get one message out, take Voyant Alert you can sign up through the municipality, because that's going to be our choice of communications to get those emergency messages out quickly.
Thank you.
Councillor Predko.
Through you, your worship. Just on Voyant Alert, looking at the categories again, we my impression has been that Voyant Alert is the place to go or be signed up for if you want to be getting notified of critical things that are going on. But the conversation today is implying that that's not going to be the timely place for the piece of information that you may be looking for. So I'm just feeling like we're getting a little bit of a mixed message about, you're telling us we should sign up for Voyant Alert because that's where the truth is going to come. But we're also hearing that we should be following, the OPP on Twitter and the Weather Network. And I think that the intent of this motion was to provide some way to help consolidate where people are supposed to go. And I just want to make sure that we understand really what the purpose of Voyant is. We do have road closure notices and service interruption advisories, but what you're telling us today is that this is going to be a much more scheduled than reactive system.
So I will say, if you want to know about the road closures, Highway 400, your best bet is 511. And I can tell you that for the reason of the moment that the OPP dispatcher, an OPP officer arrives, or our fire dispatch notifies OPP, for example, we're closing lane 1 for our safety. That automatically, as soon as that OPP communications person has it, there's a communications person that starts to tweet out at OPP headquarters, which automatically ties into 511. So that lane will close what we call number 1 lane, and that starts getting fed out. And I'm going to say Fowlers or the highway contracting people, that message goes to them, and then they start a response to supplement. And I'm giving you the ideas of what's happened. So the fastest way to know if the lane's closed or if a road closure goes is that, because for example, we had a motor vehicle collision last week. We pulled up, took lane 1, right? And then we had a vehicle go racing through the scene as we're about to start extrication. Well, my people safety is paramount, shut the highway down. We don't even have police and all that on the scene yet, right? So that is, we pull the fire truck across the lane, and guess what? Nobody goes. And it's within, I'm going to say a half an hour, 45 minutes, the exact timeline, I don't know. We had safely done our work, and we pulled our trucks back and get back into lane 1 and so forth. So that gets communicated roughly. Then we have a tow truck that pulled up, took some pictures of a scene, put them out on I'm going to say Twitter and all of that. And that caused grief because there's notifications that need to happen. So that's why we're very, very guarded with what we're putting out. And so Hydro, your best bet is Hydro One app. I can't start, that's for the most part, that's where I'm getting my information from. I can tell you that also that there's times where I'm notified of things, but I've had to sign non-disclosures and I'm not confidentiality agreements and all of that, then I am not allowed to, I'm gonna say, relay information until such time as it is an emergency. And a good example is CP rail with that line going through. I may get some information on the CP rail and all of that, but I'm not allowed to divulge that until such time that it is an emergency. OPP intelligence, they'll contact me and tell me that this is going to transpire. We may be aware of it, something that's going to start. I can't divulge that until such time as it's happening. So those are some of the other things that are background. I can assure you that all of those things I monitor, but if I'm cutting my grass, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for me to get to it, shall we say. So that's why it's very important that if you want to know, if you follow Twitter, the OPP is very good on what they're doing on Twitter. If you want to know about roads, 511. The district uses 511. The township, we have access to 511, but closing a township road is very seldom ever happen, but all of those things go through 511. We're part of that network, and that's your quickest way if you want to know road information. And we can put something together that if you want to know roads, we say kind of look up 511. If it's hydro, look up the hydro app.
I think if I may, what I'm getting out of all this, I think it'd be very useful, and yes, Ms. Schneider, I'm looking at you being communications among other things, is that I think we should create a information package. What I mean by that, I'm not talking about more than a page, that we distribute through our social media to all our residents saying, here are the best sources for reliable information. And you've mentioned 511, you've mentioned Twitter, you've mentioned the Hydro One app, and you may come up with a couple of others. I mean, I have Buoyant Alert on my phone, but I have to go scanning through to see it because it's amazing how little I actually see on that. It doesn't seem to be very active from my perspective, or maybe I've been filtered out because nobody wants me to know things. Wouldn't be the first time. But I think that would be very useful for all our residents because, well, I certainly appreciate Councillor Graziano's comment that, you know, we as councillors sometimes get calls, texts, emails from constituents saying, you know, what the heck's going on? I'd rather they go straight to the source than via me, because the source might be that much faster and more reliable than myself. And I think would be a very useful information to share with our residents. And sure, you could argue some of them may already know it or should already know it, but it never hurts to remind people, just like it never hurts to remind people to replace the batteries in their smoke alarm. Councillor, Ms. Schneider, you want to make a comment, and then I'll go to Councillor Graziano.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to offer and be very humble in that I have no problem with you if you have access to information before we have access to information, and it's a reliable sourced piece of information, be it we're cutting the grass or something is happening. Feel free to post it if it's sourced on your channels and tag us in, and that will help us. We want to be in this together. It's not a race to get to who gets there first, it's who gets there more accurately. So if something has happened and you have a reliable source from the channels, which I think your worship is a great idea, we'll definitely create a one pager and we'll actually pin it to the top of our social so it's available all the time. But if you find it and it's sourced and it's accurate, tag us in, and we'll get notified right away. And that's another way that we can internally talk, but it's not a competition to who gets it there first. Absolutely. It's just a matter of who has the most accurate who has the most accurately sourced information. And if we can all help each other, I think that's great. And your worship will get this document out right away.
Councillor Predko, is your hand still up or you're done? Okay, I just want to make sure. Councillor Graziano, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a quick question, because forgive me, I wasn't on council at the term when Voyant Alert was passed. I've played with it, but frankly speaking, not enough clearly. What is the use case for it then, if I can ask just for future reference? Specifically, what is it intended to do, so I can educate my constituents on the necessity behind why they should subscribe?
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Councillor Graziano, there are red, green, and yellow there are red, green, and yellow Voyant alerts. So we can do a green alert about a euchre event, or not really a euchre event, but more of a township event, like the Honeybee Festival is canceled due to rain, would be something in the green. A yellow would be, there's flooding in this area. If we're advised of flooding, because Brad can tell us about flooding on the weekend and stuff like that. A red would be like an emergency where it would come forward. If we get pushed the information, we can push it through on Voyant Alert if it's still relevant. So we, with the information about the accident north, getting sourced information was after the fact. So there's no point in sending out a Voyant Alert, because then we lose credibility as to how relevant our Voyant is, right? So, and just so you know, Councillor Bradco, we send the information, it gets approved by Voyant Alert, and then it gets pushed out. So there could be a chink in the chain at that end too, in which case it gets sent back to us, and then we're like, forget it. There's no point in putting that out because it's not relevant anymore. So Voyant Alert can work so long as, again, we have good sourced accurate information. I personally, if I want to know whether or not the road's closed going down to Barrie, I'll just take a quick look on Twitter and see. I don't have any access to any other intel than that, right? So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Councillors Hazelton and Cooper, you've been silent. I just want to make sure we're not leaving you out, or if you waved your hand at me and I didn't see it.
What's Twitter?
Thank you. Councillor Bojack.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, Chief Van Dam, the Voyant Alert, I'm not familiar with, but perhaps you could just enlighten myself and anybody who's watching. Do you need to subscribe? A, do you need to pay a fee? B, and do you have to individually go through and say, I want to receive messages from the District of Muskoka, Simcoe County, whatever? Do you have to subscribe to the individuals that you want to receive messages from? And say it's a boil water advisory in Port Severn, but that information would come from the district. How do I get that information as a resident in this township?
And for you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor
I'm sorry.
Bojack.
I addressed the wrong person, my mistake.
Oh, no, I knew where you were headed. I just need to turn my camera on. You do need to subscribe to Voyant Alert. It is in every newsletter that we have been pushing out for the last several months to encourage our residents to do it on as well. Trish has scheduled posts all over our social medias to encourage people to register. Once they register to Voyant Alert, they would immediately get access to any type of push outs that we get. They don't necessarily need to subscribe to specific channels. This is the channel that we would use it for. And there's no fee. That was your last question.
So just
For you, there's no
elaborate.
fee. For the user, there's no fee. For the municipality, there's a fee.
Okay.
But there's no fee for the user.
Chief Mundum.
So I will just elaborate a little bit on that. So for example, when you sign up for Voyant Alert, you automatically sign up for emergency response. Then the rest, you can decide what you want. So if our communications department wants to tweet out about, say, the arena being closed today due to a mechanical breakdown or something to that, right? I may not be interested in that messaging. So I subscribe to what I want to do it. As for the district is only communicating today for emergencies. One of the things going back, we are the only township, or we're the only municipality in the District of Muskoka that is using Voyant Alert to send out other communications. And we're reviewing it, and once we've been doing it for a full year, then we'll be taking it back to the MERC, which is the Muskoka Emergency Response Committee, and see if there's benefits for it. But we didn't want to clog up that piece of emergency. We want to make sure that that stays clear. So when you sign up, you decide what you want, and then and you can turn off the, for example, you can turn off the emergency piece of it and only get the piece that talks about the township. There's a public meeting for such and such. So that can be done. The district right now is currently only using Voyant Alert for emergency response. Period.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Voyant Alert is in part driven by the address you enter in your account. So you can put in 2 or 3 addresses if you want to have 2 or 3 different, I'll call it locations or properties affected, because like I know in mine, I've entered Barrie, for instance, as well as Port Severn and Honey Harbor and McTier.
I see a lot of councillors shaking their head and agreeing with you. And I'm obviously behind the curve on this.
I just signed up.
You just signed up? Okay, I don't feel so bad now.
And I've just been advised that there's free parking on Family Day weekend.
Councillor Jarvis, I thought you were giving us your full attention.
Mr. Chair, there is a report that we brought to council in August of 2022 that you can look up too. I can also quickly send a link to council. so you can
I
see
think that'd be greatly
Okay.
appreciated for both new counselors and counselors with poor memory or research skills. I was trying to be polite. Councilor Graziano, do you want to have an additional question?
Yeah, if I can, and this is directed to our district counselors. Thank you, Mr. Van Dam, for providing us with how they use the Voyant Alert right now. But to our district counselors, do we know how the district communicates out these types of messages, whether it's OPP 511, hydro district, or any of their lower tiers? Do they even?
Other than Voyant Alert emergencies,
They do not.
no, they've been known in a number of cases to send out emails to call counselors. For instance, when they had the water disaster in Bracebridge, they sent that out, but I'm going to say it's rare that I get that kind of email from district council.
Great, great. So I would agree. Then I think it's a fantastic idea to at least provide to our constituents as well as to ourselves, a list of credible sources. And perhaps we also look at or assume that with our aging population that some will not be on Twitter or platforms such as Twitter, to perhaps look at a workaround around Twitter so we can they can get communications. Thank you.
Nair, followed by Councilor Cooper.
Mr. Chair, finally, as I mentioned, all of the information is in the newsletter as well. And so that is distributed through emails. That's a choice that the council has made in how you are communicating with your constituents. So please link the newsletter. It also goes out to all the lake associations, and Voyant Alert is in the newsletters as well.
Thank you. Councilor Cooper.
Yeah, I don't really have an awful lot to add other than what I just heard from Councillor Graziano, that we have a large segment of the population that may not be on Twitter or any other, what are we calling these things, socials? I certainly am not at all, and thankfully. So I just think it's important to make sure that we make every effort to communicate with all our community, not just those that are on socials, and find a way to do that. Thank you.
Councilor Hazelton.
Unlike Councillor Cooper, I'm very tech savvy. Just kidding.
Not Twitter.
Well, actually, sadly, I've been hooked onto Twitter since about 2010. Used it for business a long time ago, but the question I have, and perhaps this is to Ms. Schneer. If you're on Twitter, you can search for things. You can get feeds coming your way based on previous activities. Twitter is quite happy to send you suggested feeds. But I've heard today that the best way to get information about traffic is OPP. And so let's assume that as I'm a Twitter user, but nobody is sending me information about OPP. And I just did a little search for fun to see, well, what do I get if I search for OPP or Highway 400 or whatever? And it was basically useless information. So my question is, if you had a Twitter account, what search criteria would you put in to then, and this isn't just for me, I think we need to publish this for others. What search criteria would you put in to find so-called information about Highway 400 or Highway 12 or Honey Harbor Road or anything else? In other words, without knowing what to search for, you get garbage. So just asking for guidance on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Hazelton, just to let you know, it's OPP_central for the information that you're looking for on Twitter, on Instagram, and also on Facebook, Central Ontario. So that's will give you information that's relevant to here and not Manitoba. And we will include that in the sheet that we are going to create and get it out in the very near future. Okay.
That's good. Any other criteria? That's OPP Central, but let's say I'm driving up the 400, I can do 511. But are there other search criteria that give you faster insights into things?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I would say this is almost a social media lesson and maybe a little bit outside the scope of this meeting, but I will say that what you can do is there's another app. Waze is a really good traffic app. You can map out your route and it will tell you right on there whether or not there's any accidents on that. And speed traps. Yeah, exactly. So that's a very popular app right now. It's one that downloads to most car apps. It's called WAZE Waze. It's a little blue icon. It's very successful in terms of getting access to information, but your worship, Mr. Chair, I don't want to turn this into a social media lesson, but I would be happy to do a social media lesson for all of council, if that is the wish of council.
I'm suspecting, and I'm speaking strictly for myself, of course, that once you come out with your list, I might need a little bit of advice on one or two items on those lists and how the heck to access them. But there you go. We'll leave
Happy
that
to
for
help.
another time.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooper, is that a fresh hand or that's?
Yeah. Wanted to acknowledge Councillor Hazelton is a far greater Twitter than I am. Oh, Twitter. Thank you.
Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, your worship. And I think we just opened up and explored an interesting opportunity, perhaps if not for staff, maybe to our two library board members here, that we might want to consider doing some kind of seminar on how to do this. So I know that there's aggregators such as Hootsuite that could possibly be a part of the seminar, whereby you create an account and you see what you subscribe to different channels, they all converge into one. These are just options, but maybe to our library board, it might be something that could draw in a little bit of a crowd, or our township. Just spitballing here. Thank you.
All right, I think we've had a very good discussion on all this. The motion in front of committee of the whole, which is, by the way, a motion that is then presented to council the following month, but clearly I think we're going to have some staff response in the meantime. The motion is moved by Councillor Graziano, seconded by Councillor Predko. Be it resolved that staff investigate ways and or systems to notify councillors of future emergencies, hydro outages, and that staff present back to council a report with options. All those in favor? And that is carried. Item 2, residential waste tags. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, worship. This is going to be an interesting one, of course, because it seems that over the last month we've seen a lot of activity around waste. The idea here is to stimulate a conversation amongst council as well as staff, but specifically directed more so at our district councillors In requesting to have them or authorizing them to take this ask back to district and see what possible options there are for our community. And essentially, if I can simplify, our community is comprised of the majority of our community rather is comprised of seasonal cottagers who tend to be, 3 seasons absent, 1 season's present, or 1 season rather present, singular. And as such, they are missing out on 3 seasons of their waste, but are still paying the full pop towards their tax for that portion of the waste. Upon returning to their cottages for the season that they return to, which is likely summer, they are then intermittently at their cottage locations, perhaps a couple of weeks here, 1 week back in the city, maybe another week traveling somewhere else. And again, they're further not receiving the service that is being offered with regards to garbage collection and or bin drop off. I've had numerous constituents over last year, and this was a major issue that plagued us last year, that were complaining about bears and the population of bears. But they also identified an issue whereby they had put 3 bags at the end of in their bear bin at the end of the weekend, headed home, and the garbage collectors who did pick up the garbage only took 2 because it's the district allotment for the week, leaving or keeping behind 1 bag to fester in the summer heat in a bear bin, thereby bringing live animals back to us. So the idea here is there a way that we can provide our constituents with 104 garbage tags, that's 2 per week for 52 weeks, and allow them to use those tags as they see fit, essentially giving them the opportunity to miss a week in the summertime because they're going into the city or traveling, come back, have perhaps family members the following week, and then putting out 3 bags versus 2, but because they have enough garbage tags that they've been issued, they can go ahead and do so, and garbage collection will pick it up based on the tags associated with those bags, rather than just leaving 1 around to fester. Or alternatively, if someone is going to a depot, such as our Baxter transfer station, such as South Gibson Lake Road, whereby they are attended, that they show that the bags are tagged and being waved through without any additional costs. Because another constituent issue has been that they brought household garbage items to the dumps and have been charged for a broom handle, because it's not bagged and it was perceived not to be allowed within the defined allowable garbage drop-off criteria. So with that being said, looking to open up some conversations around this and see where it goes. Thank you.
All right. Because I don't want to be here until tomorrow, I want to restrict this conversation to bag tags and not the overall solid waste conversation. And I also say that this has actually been brought up informally, not formally, but informally with a number of people at district, and in which there is agreement that it's worthy of looking into further. Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Bochek, please.
Thank you, Chair Kutzier, and I concur that this is something that should be added to the mix to consider. But I have a little bit of information that I'd like to share. That's a little broader that I discovered in the last week, and we've discovered a lot of things along the way, but this is at a very high level, the Municipal Act. The Municipal Act, if you read it, you can read under page 25, under spheres of jurisdiction, says that when it comes to waste collection, lower tier municipalities have the right to be involved or take it over. And if you read that, I then said, well, I wonder what happens in my town of Aurora. And funny thing, found out that in York Region, all the lower tier municipalities do all their waste collection. Simcoe County is a mix. Some do, some don't. Where they don't, the district fills in. And so I even have verbiage here from Aurora that talks about them passing a bylaw that allows them to do all the waste collection. And I think it's very good news for us. And so it's sort of next steps. Yes, incorporate a number of things, and we need to have a discussion here at council about what we think the next step or what we think we should be doing in the future. But we are waiting for a report from Hutchison and Environmental. I have a meeting with the District of Muskoka, District of Muskoka, two commissioners, Steele and Olimer, the finance individual, to discuss things like where did they get their stats and so forth. So there's hopefully some information coming forward. So my sort of suggestion is that we need to take suggestions like this and consider them, but we really need to nail down what we can and can't not do. And I think I've found some information here, which I will be taking up with the district. So I just wanted to sort of, I know you didn't want to have a full discussion about this. I'm just providing information. It's not arguable at all. It's just simply information that's available. And I think it in all is a very good news story. It allows us to drive some change. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Wojcik, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. This is Cow, and it's great time to talk about this type of stuff. When I read this, I thought of two things. One, the trucks that are sent, we have a new company doing the curbside pickup, and the trucks are designed to complete their route, and when they complete their route, they are full. And then they drive an hour and a half up to the landfill site and dump it. So using the bag tag system, which I support 100%, and I support Councillor Graziano's methodology behind this, there would need to be changes at the service level in order to, obviously, if we have a weekend where people put out 6 bags and they use 6 of their tags, those trucks are going to have to take 2 runs up to the landfill site. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider would be what Councillor Cooper was talking about, which is making changes, but I don't think we have the room for a dump site here in the township of Georgian Bay, which means we would have to take it outside of our township, and then we're at the will of the district we take it to for tipping fees. So lots of discussion to happen on this, and I'm glad it was brought up. And I do support the resolution, and if it comes to a vote, I think we need, which it probably won't, but we need to address this issue, and this would solve a lot of problems, especially in the rural area that we're in. And I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, just put a clarification, since I don't have curbside pickup where I have my seasonal residence. Is curbside, is it bags still, or are they bins that trucks use an automated arm to pick up and dump? So there are bags still. Okay, that's all I need to know. Thanks.
Simcoe County is the one that has got those
Got it.
armed trucks. now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 2 methods. Through you, Chair. We have 2 methods here. You can put all your individual kitchen bags in a garbage can, and that's classed as 1 bag, or you use a green garbage bag.
All right, yeah, but you do, if I may, Councillor Jarvis, raise one of the points that, of course, has come in is that where there's roadside pickup, they are actively trying to control the volumes. So they control the volumes on a per pickup basis as opposed to per year, which I think is one of the important points that Councillor Graziano is making. That if you put out 2 bags a week in the summer and 0 bags a week in the winter, you've averaged 1 bag a week. And whether the right number is 104 or 52 or 40 tags, doesn't matter. If everybody pays for so much garbage to be picked up, we should. And I think there's 2 aspects in my mind to this. One is, I'll call it the short term. In other words, this summer, people have roadside pickup. If they're putting out 3 bags, how do we get those 3 bags picked up instead of just 2? Especially considering that some of these people doing that aren't putting any bags out for 4 months, 6 months, or 8 months of the year, whatever their personal circumstances may be. But there is a much bigger picture, and part of that includes, as Councillor Jarvis pointed out, he doesn't get roadside pickup. He takes his garbage to a bin. And nobody's checking at this point whether his bags are tagged or not. And that's like a future challenge with this. But my comments will go to Councillor Predko and Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you, your worship, and through you. I just wanted to actually piggyback on a couple of those comments that you were just making. So for the seasonal residents without pickup that go to bins, I think right now that there's a limit of 2 garbage bags that you can take to a transfer station. And this tagging system would also help those seasonal residents without pickup that have garbage that they don't, for whatever reason, want to take to a bin. So I support this motion wholly.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Couple of points, if I may. The first one is the cost of the pickup is sent to the township and divvied up based on mill rate. So that's I think a fundamental concept we need to understand across the board. So it really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how many bags they pick up. It's all apportioned back to the township and split up by mill rate. But personally, I would like to understand what the administrative cost of a ticketing system is versus take it away and just pick up the garbage that's there. I personally don't believe that on average, the residents in our township are going to be generating an undue amount of waste. I think that the characteristic of our township is much more environmentally friendly than cities or other places. And so I think that one of the things to consider, first of all, I support the resolution as it reads based on where we are today, but I think going forward, we need to be thinking about just taking away those barriers, because we're getting into what I'll call complex math to figure out how many tags this guy gets and how many tags they can use, and on and on and on. Just take the whole ticketing system out of the picture and let people dispose of the waste that they need. And on average, I don't think it's going to be any worse than what we have today. Thank you.
One response, Councillor Hazelton, is sadly on a per capita basis, our township produces more garbage than the other municipalities and many municipalities around us.
If I could correction, Your Honor, Your Worship, the stats that you are referring to are related to properties. They are not related to people. And I don't believe properties generate waste. People generate waste. And I have redone the stats that Mr. Steele has provided us based on population, and we are not leading any other township in our area. We are in the top 3, the bottom of the top 3. And so the optics of what we get from the district make us look like we are bad polluters and waste generators, but on a per capita basis, a per population basis, where people generate garbage, we are not. And so I think we want to be really careful about the stats we get from the district, because they are sounding like we are bad people generating way more waste, or maybe we have transient people coming in and dumping off garbage, which I don't believe either. And nobody so far has been able to get us the stats to defend any of this. And the stats that they have produced, again, are not people-based, they're property-based. And it's another problem we need to deal with to fix the optics for our township.
Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of comments, if I can, very quickly on that. So first and foremost, with regards to stats just on itself, I would agree. I think that the stats may be somewhat skewed, and here's kind of where I think it may be skewed. Our waste weights rather, I wonder whether or not we're being compared to townships or cities that actually separate out and have a strong recycling program whereby their food wastes are removed from the actual bagged garbage. And then, of course, at that point being determined. So is it because we include our food waste, which tends to be the heaviest anyways, into our bagged garbage, that we are then, 10, 20, 30% higher than our other municipalities in the surrounding area? But second to that, I think this could solve a couple of issues here. The suggestion, number one, I know that the district already issues bag tags. You can purchase them online for $8 each, and I think they'll either mail them to you or you can go pick them up at the district. And so they seem to already have the infrastructure in place to be able to deliver these. I can't imagine that we wouldn't be able to include the annual allotment in our tax roll, perhaps on an annual basis. Once a year, here you go. And whether they're printed with the resident's address to make sure that there's no gray market reselling of these tags later points. So if you have something from 6 Mile Lake that shows up in Honey Harbor, that could be a problem. Secondly, with regards to this, can also help with documentation. And this is an issue, and this has been an issue. And I've actually experienced this issue as well. And Commissioner Steele, in one of my questions, had to go back and look at the bylaws to determine whether or not this is within the bylaws. We tend to be asked at the depot sites whether or not we have a tax roll document in our, that something that can prove that we're within the municipality and we're paying our taxes. Now, Commissioner Steele was somewhat concerned about this, and hence the reason why he looked into the bylaw to determine whether or not the bylaw says that this is a requirement. And in fact, from my understanding, he came back saying it's not in the bylaw, but he cannot confirm or nor deny that this could happen to our constituents, even and this is in the context of South Gibson Lake Road as the changes were underway, because I wanted to be able to inform my residents, hey, bring your tax roll, bring a copy of your tax roll with you when you go to drop off your garbage. And the tagging system could eliminate that requirement, because as long as you have a tag on the bag, the person at the facility sees the tag and says, over to you, feel free to dump. So just my thoughts. Thank you.
Valid points. And I think your point about having our organics mixed with our garbage is a very important point that has been made at district on a regular basis and will continue to be made on a regular basis until they get a little smarter when it comes to handling organics. And by the way, most of district council are strongly encouraging staff there to be better at handling organics. Councillor Hazelton, I want to get this done. So I hope it's not going off on yet another. Go ahead.
Just a point, Food Cycler has a municipal sized system for dealing with municipal green bin waste that we may or may not want to consider at some point in time.
I absolutely think we have to consider handling our organics much better than we have in the past. I have moved by Councillor Graziano. Chief Van Dam, I don't think we're in an emergency, are we?
No. Listening to the discussion that happens, I only ask you one thing, is think about the enforcement of whatever you go to do, because we're in a predicament right now is who's going to enforce some of that garbage problems that are out there right now. So please keep us in mind, because I don't mind doing it if we're going to get compensated for it, but if it's coming that we're supplementing the district, I have a concern.
Valid point. Councillor Cooper.
So I wanted to thank our Chief Van Dam for that. I think any efforts I make at the district with respect to this particular matter will be trying to employ the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's really what you're talking about. It's actually a business term. And I think that's what we need to try and remember for the longer term. There's a lot of things, a lot of pieces in this, as I said at the outset, and there's a lot of misinformation. Thank you.
Okay, I have moved by Councillor Graziano, seconded by Councillor Bocheck. Be it resolved that council authorizes our district councillors to bring this request to have 104 garbage bag tags per household provided from the district council forward to the Engineering and Public Works Committee. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Moved by Counselor Jarvis, seconded by Counselor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the committee of the whole does now adjourn. Oh, it says not adjourn, but I'm going to change that to now. Because I think. Yeah, now adjourn at 12:36 PM. To reconvene on June 6th, 2023, or at the call of the chair. All those in favor. And that is carried. We are adjourned.